Leviticus chapter 4, verse 25. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out his blood at the bottom of the altar of burnt offering. Notes. The blood being applied to the four corners, or the four horns at the four corners of the brazen altar, it typifies that Christ and Him crucified is the only answer for the sin of humanity, and that refers to all of humanity. Verse 26, And he shall burn all his fat upon the altar as the fat of the sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall make an atonement for him as concerning his sin, and it shall be forgiven him. And if any one of the common people sin through ignorance, while he does somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning these things, which ought not be done, and be guilty, or if his sin, which he has sinned, come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he has sinned. Notes, as is obvious here in the eyes of God, sin is sin, irrespective as to who commits it. It must be addressed, and in essence, addressed the same way, even if it's just a common person, or a rich ruler, or a priest, or even the entirety of a nation. The only answer is the cross. Of course, and like I keep repeating, this is what it typifies. Verse 29. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. Notes, Jesus basically became sin offering on the cross, documented in Isaiah chapter 53, verse 10, even though you kind of have to look for it. Verse 30. And the priest shall take of the blood thereof with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the blood thereof at the bottom of the altar. Notes. If it is to be noticed, the solution for all, with some minor variations, is the same. So why the constant repetition? It is that we might know the seriousness of the matter as it regards the horror of sin and its only solution, which, of course, is the shed blood of Jesus Christ. There's probably hundreds of verses that point to that, but Ephesians chapter 2, verse 13 and onward is another good one. Verse 31. And he shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat is taken away from the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall burn it upon the altar for a sweet savor unto the Lord, and the priest shall make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. Notes, under the Old Covenant, how could a person know for sure that he was forgiven? Well, first of all, he had to place his faith in the trustworthiness of the words spoken to him. And second, he had to understand the value of the blood shed for him, at least in a sense, knowing that it pointed to one who was to come. And you can find the one who is to come. It's a little bit hidden, but he's in Genesis chapter 3. There is some, the first prophetic verse of the Bible, if I remember correctly, it's Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. I may be wrong, but it speaks of the devil having his head stomped, and Jesus essentially getting his feet injured, and of course we all know what that meant. Verse 32. And if he bring a lamb for a sin offering, he shall bring it a female without blemish. Notes. In this case, a female lamb was required, in effect stating that it was through Eve that the first temptation came, and that it would be through a woman that redemption would come. That's very interesting right there. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14 for a little bit more on it. Verse 33. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay it for a sin offering in the place where they kill the burnt offering. Verse 34. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the blood thereof at the, turning the page, at the bottom of the altar. And he shall take away all the fat thereof, as the fat of the lamb is taken away from the sacrifice of the peace offerings. And the priest shall burn them upon the altar according to the offerings made by fire unto the Lord. And the priest shall make an atonement for his sin that he hath committed, and it shall be forgiven him. Notes, now in order to obtain forgiveness for his sin, the man said nothing, and he did nothing, except lay his hand upon the head of the spotless substitute, thus transferring his guilt and its doom to the substitute. The law claimed that man's life as the just penalty for the sin. The sin being transferred, the law then claimed the life of the substitute, and directly that life was surrendered, and the full claim of the law was satisfied, and the man thereby saved. This is exactly what Christ did for us. He took all of our sin, placed it upon himself, and done away with it, even though he himself was innocent of any wrongdoing. Chapter 5 of Leviticus, in continuing. And if a soul sin, and hear the voice of swearing, and is a witness, whether he has seen or known of it, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Notes, the trespass offering was provided to atone for trespass against God and trespass against man. In trespass against God, sacrifice came first and restitution afterwards. And in trespass against man, of course, this order was reversed. Verse 2. Or if a soul touch any unclean thing, whether it be a carcass of an unclean beast, or a carcass of unclean cattle, or the carcass of unclean creeping things, and if it be hidden from him, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Notes. Well, obviously, the carcass insinuates death. Death is caused by original sin, of course. If a dead animal or dead human being was touched, the person doing so was rendered unclean and had to go through a particular ceremony to once again be considered clean. These are just basically constant reminders in the old law of sin and its devastating effect on humanity. Verse 3. Or if he touch the uncleanness of man, whatsoever uncleanness it be that a man shall be defiled withal, and it be hid from him, when he knows of it, then he shall be guilty. Notes, this of course pertains to the touching of a leper or a dead body, which can be negative even today. Verse 4. I don't know why anybody would just want to touch a dead body. Ew, what does it feel like? Ew. Verse 4. Or if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatsoever it be that a man shall pronounce with an oath, and it be hid from him, when he knows of it, when he shall be guilty in one of these, and it shall be when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he has sinned in that thing. Notes. We should learn from all of this that there are no little sins in the eyes of God. There is not a Christian on earth, however eminent, who does not, every day he lives, accumulate enough guilt to ruin him forever. If it weren't for God the Father and Jesus doing their thing. And more, with all his efforts, prayers, joys, and consecrations, the best Christian is still very faulty. We'll have to go ahead and go on to verse 6. No, I don't have enough time for that. Chapter 5, verse 6 of Leviticus is where we're going to have to pick up. Thank you, and God bless. I hope to be with you again.